Business schools, they're these absolute powerhouses of research. They really shape how we think about everything from marketing all the way to finance. But what's the actual real world value of all that scholarly work? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into that exact question and see what the research says about, well, the research itself. All right, first things first, let's talk about the money. The annual investment in business school research is estimated to be a mind-blowing 4 times billion dollars. And get this, a single academic article can cost up to $500,000 to produce. So yeah, we're not talking about a small investment here. This is a huge, huge financial commitment. Okay, but here's where things get interesting. Despite that massive investment, a massive chunk of all this research, well, it pretty much never leaves the university. It's basically academics talking to other academics, and it just stays locked up in these scholarly journals. And that brings us right to the big question, doesn't it? Is this whole multi-billion-dollar thing actually worth it? Are we actually getting something back for all that cash in the form of, say, real-world progress and better business practices? Well, to even begin to answer that, we've got to get to the heart of the problem. And it really boils down to this huge disconnect between academic rigor, doing the research right, and real-world relevance, doing research that actually, matters. See, the academic world pretty much runs on this idea of publish or perish. And what that does is it creates a culture where the number of things you publish is way more important than the quality of those publications or their potential to make any kind of difference. The pressure is just to produce more and more papers, not necessarily better or more useful ones. So the old way of looking at success, it's all about stuff that's easy to count. How many articles did you publish? What's the journal's ranking? How many other academics cited you? But what this research suggests is a much better way, measuring the actual impact. Like, does it actually mean something in the real world? Does it help society? And this is the big one. Does it actually change how people do things? There's this great analogy for this whole situation. The current system pretty much encourages researchers to study questions that are easy to tackle with the data they have, not necessarily the really complex, messy, but way more important questions that businesses and society are actually dealing with. It's like looking for your lost keys, but you're only looking where the light is good, not where you probably dropped them. Okay, so if the old system is broken, what do we do instead? Well, the paper we're looking at here actually proposes a solution, a whole new framework designed from the ground up to measure what truly matters. And at its heart is this really simple but super powerful equation. For research to have a true impact, it needs three things. First, you need rigor. Is the research solid? Did they do it right? Then you need relevance. Does it tackle a problem that people actually care about in the real world? And finally, you need resonance. Does it actually get out there and connect with the people it's supposed to help? If you don't have all three, you just don't get impact. But it doesn't stop there. The framework breaks impact down even more. Instead of just one score for everything, it says we should be looking at 4 totally different dimensions, and each one is tied to a specific group of people or stakeholders. All right, first up is academic impact. This is the one we all know, right? How much does the research influence other professors and scholars? It's all about moving the conversation forward inside the academic community itself. Next, number 2 is teaching impact. This is all about how research makes its way into the classroom. Does it end up in textbooks and case studies and lectures and actually shape the next generation of leaders? The student is who really matters here. Third, we've got societal impact, and this is where we zoom out to the big picture. Does the research end up influencing public policy or improving our well-being or changing how we act as consumers? This is the kind of research that affects all of us as citizens and the policymakers who are supposed to represent us. And finally, the fourth one is managerial impact. Now, for a business school, this one might just be the most important of all. Does the research actually change how managers make decisions and run their companies? This is that crucial link between the ivory tower and the actual boardroom. Okay, so we have these 4 types of impact, but how in the world do you actually track them? Well, the framework suggests a 2-stage process, and it's all about telling the difference between some early signs of potential and the long-term actual proof. So right after something is published in the short term, we can look for what they call signals. These are just early clues that a piece of research might turn out to be important. But then, over a few years, in the medium term, we need to look for concrete measures that show that impact is really happening.
Let's make this concrete, because this table really shows how it works. So for academic impact, right? The early signal is getting published in a top journal. The real measure, though, is how many times other academics cite it down the road. For societal impact, an early signal might be a mention in the media, but the real evidence comes later, from things like how many people download it from public research sites. And look at managerial impact. A signal could be that a company helped fund the research, but the real proof? Seeing that research actually pop up in a company's patents. That's real.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but putting it into practice, that's not so easy. There are some definite challenges, but the paper also lays out a really powerful call to action to build a better system for the future. To get there, we have to clear 3 pretty big hurdles. First, there's just the variety of stuff researchers produce. How do you track the impact of a book or a case study, not just a journal article? Second, you've got time and attribution. I mean, real impact can take years to show up, and lots of people are usually involved, so who gets the credit? And finally, there's the data. We just don't have consistent, open data to track all these new metrics at a big scale. So, what's the solution? What can we actually do? Well, for the folks in charge, the deans of business schools, the advice is pretty clear. Stop focusing only on journal articles. They need to start valuing and actually rewarding other things, like creating textbooks and teaching cases, which obviously have a huge impact on students.
Okay, what about the editors of these journals, the ones who are kind of the gatekeepers? The message for them is to build a bridge to the real world. A simple way to do that? Create summaries that aren't stuck behind a paywall. Summaries that managers, policymakers, and, regular people can actually read and understand.
And last but not least, what about the researchers themselves, the faculty? The advice here is simple. Get out of the office and engage with the real world. Go talk to managers, find out what challenges they're really facing, and focus your work on solving problems that actually matter. So all of this really brings us to one final, really important question. When we look at a business school, what should we really be measuring? Should its legacy be this giant library of research that very few people read? Or should it be the real, tangible impact it has on the world?